Today we're going to be looking at the poem Hour by Carol Ann Duffy. Now we've already met Carol Ann Duffy previously in the cluster because we read the poem Quick Draw, which was also by her, actually in the same collection of poems, so in the same book. Now Quick Draw explores really negative, quite painful elements of love, but still shows love to be quite powerful. This poem shows the power of love, perhaps in a more positive light, but it definitely does have its negative undertones, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So we'll have a look at the title, then we'll have a read through the poem, and then I'll come back and we'll go line by line. So, hour, on the most obvious level, we know that this is a period of time. Thinking a little bit more deeply, it's a very short period of time, but it's not as short perhaps as a minute or a second. So perhaps it's trying to show a period of time that's long enough, it's a substantial enough for something to happen, but not short enough for it to be so fleeting as a minute or a second. And then also we've got the homophone hour, which could link to hour. This hour suggests a kind of shared experience, something that's about being a pair. So we get the idea here that this is definitely going to be about a relationship or some shared experience of some sort, whether that's a parental relationship, a sibling relationship, or a romantic relationship. So let's read through and have a think about what kind of relationship that is. Love's time's beggar, but even a single hour, bright as a dropped coin, makes love rich. We find an hour together, spend it not on flowers or wine, but the whole of the summer sky and a grass ditch. For thousands of seconds we kiss, your hair like treasure on the ground, the Midas light turning your limbs to gold. Time slows, for here we are millionaires, backhanding the night, so nothing dark will end our shining hour. No jewel hold a candle to the cup you spit, hung from the blade of grass at your ear. No chandelier or spotlight see you better lit than here. Now, time hates love, wants love poor, but love spins gold, gold, gold from straw. Okay, so let's go from the top then and think about this line by line. So, love's time's beggar. Now, if you are clever, you might have noticed that this links to a line from Sonnet 116. It's very, very similar to a line from Sonnet 116, obviously written a long, long time after Sonnet 116. So, who knows, perhaps Carol Ann Duffy took inspiration from what Shakespeare wrote. And if we remember, Shakespeare wrote, "Love's not time's fool." So we've already got a bit of contrast there, where Shakespeare says that love can be separate from time, it can be everlasting, whereas here we've got an immediate acknowledgement that actually love and time are inextricably linked, and that love is weak in comparison with time because love is time's beggar. We've got the personification of both love and time here, which kind of gives them a greater importance or greater power. So, love's time's beggar, but even a single hour, bright as a dropped coin, makes love rich. Now, this is where we start seeing how time and love don't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be a negative relationship. So, a single hour, bright as a dropped coin. Now, we get the idea of luck here, because people always say if you pick up a dropped coin, it can be lucky. So it's kind of like the luck of finding an hour to love in is like the luck of finding a dropped coin. Makes love rich. Now this coin and rich kind of introduces a semantic field of richness. Now we know that a semantic field is kind of a theme of language that runs throughout a text, so we've got already the semantic field of richness there. We find an hour together, spend it not on flowers or wine, but the whole of a summer sky and a grass ditch. So, flowers and wine. Quite cliched, simple tokens of love. Tokens that we would normally expect to be associated with love. But no, the speaker's saying we won't spend that hour on flowers and wine. We'll spend it on the whole of the summer sky and a grass ditch. So we've got this kind of hugeness, the massiveness of this image. The whole of the summer sky. And then we've got a little bit of what could be similar to bathos here, with it being placed together with the grass ditch. The whole of the summer sky and a grass ditch. Now they're similar images in that they're both natural images. So perhaps it suggests something a lot less artificial than the flowers and the wine, that their hour isn't going to be spent on these artificial tokens of love, it's going to be this kind of natural experience. So you'd think bathos, because we've got the whole of the summer sky in a grass ditch, but actually it's kind of the opposite, it has the opposite effect. The grass ditch almost seems elevated because it's paired with the summer sky, rather than what normally happens with bathos, where the lower thing kind of brings down the higher thing or mocks the higher thing. They're actually kind of equated and shown to be better than the flowers and the wine. Now, something else important to think about is this rhyme of ditch and rich. Now, we have got a traditional sonnet A-B rhyme scheme here, and these are full rhymes, grass and ditch. There aren't full rhymes throughout the poem, there are a lot of half rhyme, so if we do find full rhymes, it's important to think, why have they been made full rhymes, because everything is intentional, remember. So rich and ditch, again, bathos, possibly, because we've got the contrast with rich and ditch, but again, not the same effect. What seems to happen there really is that the writer is showing perhaps a richness in simple pleasures, so that the simple pleasure of the grass ditch, rhyming with rich, almost adds a richness to the grass ditch, so it makes it a lot more strong and full of passion than it might normally be. So that's the important impact of that rhyme there. Okay, let's go on to the next stanza. So, for thousands of seconds we kiss. Now, significant here that we're not referring it to an hour anymore or minutes, we're referring to it as thousands of seconds. It kind of slows down or draws out the time here. And it's a theme that runs throughout the poem of almost cheating time or trying to get more time. So by using language, the speaker can make the hour seem longer, and that's kind of the power of language in this poem. For thousands of seconds we kiss. We've kind of got repeated S sounds, sibilants. Now, the sibilants, I think, adds a kind of sensualness to it. And again, S sounds slow the pace of the reading down. For thousands of seconds we kiss. It's gentle. It's not hard like plosive alliteration. It's gentle, it's soft, and it adds that kind of sensual slow tone. Your hair like treasure on the ground. Now again here, linking to the semantic field, I'm going to just put SF here. Semantic field of richness. Treasure on the ground. The Midas light turning your limbs to gold. Now, this is quite important, this mention of Midas, because it's not the first kind of mythical allusion we're going to have. So we've got the mythical allusion of Midas. Now, if you're not sure who Midas is, he was a mythical character where everything that he touched turned to gold. So on the outside, quite a positive role. However, there was a darkness to that, and that's something that we'll be exploring in a little bit more detail later. And you'll note as we go through the poem that there's a lot of seemingly really positive imagery, but then some darkness beneath that. So the Midas light turning your limbs to gold. Again, this idea of brightness, light, summer sky, brightness. Everything is quite bright and rich. Turning your limbs to gold. Again, semantic field of richness. Time slows, for here we are millionaires backhanding the night. Now, again, linking to the semantic field of richness, you'll note we've got lots of that. And they're not millionaires in the traditional sense, they're millionaires because they are rich with love, so their love is their richness. Here is where we kind of get a hint at maybe some menace encroaching on this perfect moment. We are millionaires backhanding the night. So backhanding suggests a kind of dismissal, almost like a violent dismissal of darkness. It seems as though here love and light and richness is kind of winning through because they're backhanding the night. But we can't ignore the fact that night is being mentioned here, that there's an acknowledgement that night is a danger. An acknowledgement that love has something it must fight against, that it can't just go on and on and on without any threat. There is a threat, and that's that night. And then if we go into the next quatrain of the stanza, again, so nothing dark will end our shining hour. This idea of menace. So here, in this sort of end of this second quatrain into the third quatrain, Carol Ann Duffy is introducing a kind of sense of doom, or a shade of doom maybe. Introducing shade of doom to kind of contrast all those positive, beautiful light images. Nothing dark will end our shining hour. No jewel hold a candle to the cuckoo spit hung from the blade of grass at your ear. No chandelier or spotlight see you better lit. Now, this hold a candle to, it's kind of a play on words a little bit, could have a couple of meanings. If you hold a candle to something, you say something holds a candle to something else, you can say it compares to it. Also, hold a candle to light up. So again, on this theme of lightness. So we've got that sort of double meaning, compare to and light up. Now, no chandelier or spotlight see you better lit. The enjambment here is quite important. We've got a lot of enjambment, but I think here it's particularly important. Now remember, we've always got that slowing down of time, and I would say here there's urgency, isn't there? Because the speaker is trying to kind of reiterate that nothing can beat the love that they have in this moment, that the love is the kind of the only light that they need. So here, when it says better lit than here, it's kind of trying to almost extend the focus of the spotlight. Sort of extends the impacts that the light from the love can have before it there's that undertone before it can be threatened by darkness. And then this single word, now, again, playing with time. Carol Ann Duffy's playing with time here. This idea of cheating or stealing time. The single word kind of emphasises the idea of cheating and stealing time, having these short fragments of sentences in the middle of a line. Now, the reason why we can tell it's kind of cheating and stealing is because it goes against the traditional iambic pentameter. That we would normally find in a sonnet. In a sonnet, remember, in an iambic pentameter we have 5 unstressed and stressed beats, so it would be than, here, now, time, hates, love, wants, love, poor. Firstly, that's only 9 syllables, and secondly, the iambic pentameter just does not work. The now needs to stand by itself, so it can't flow into the next beat. It needs to stand on its own. So she's kind of cheating the iambic pentameter to get more out of the time that she can get from the poem. Time hates love, wants love poor. So here, this is a really straightforward acknowledgement of the sort of threat that time holds against love. But love spins gold, gold, gold from straw. So repetition here. This idea of value of gold. But as well, repetition doesn't always necessarily mean that certainty. Repetition can mean a kind of that maybe Carol Ann Duffy is trying to persuade herself that love is rich and love can sustain them and love can give them everything that they need in this hour. That kind of, and as well, again, it goes against the iambic pentameter. Suggesting a kind of stiltedness to the rhythm, that the rhythm of the sonnet, which is supposed to lend itself to the traditional love poem, it won't work, and she's working against something, and perhaps what she's working against is time. Here, I talked about that mythical allusion earlier. This is another mythical allusion to, and you might have guessed it already, Rumpelstiltskin. Now, again, we've got that positive idea of turning straw into gold. With Midas, everything that he touches turns into gold. But there's also this more negative idea, because both Midas and Rumpelstiltskin were punished for their greed by a lifetime of lovelessness. So perhaps it's kind of that knowledge that we've got about those myths, the fact that they are punished with a lifetime of lovelessness, is kind of foreshadowing what could happen after this poem, after the hour is over, after that kind of fleeting joy and happiness. What could happen next? It's kind of a sense of doom for what might happen later. But it's almost like the speaker doesn't want to acknowledge that, well, she's acknowledging it, but she's refusing to kind of confront it in her poem. She's just dealing with this single hour. Now, if we have a quick think, oh, actually, one more thing I wanted to say as well about this turning straw into gold and about turning everything you touch into gold. It brings up the question, is this love real, or is it an illusion? Is sort of love and infatuation and true love, is it real, or is it just an illusion? Just like these myths are made up, they're make-believe. Is this real? And secondly, is it fleeting, or is it long-lasting? It definitely seems strong in the hour, but is it strong after that point? So there's some questions to consider. Okay, let's quickly think about form then. So we know that this is a sonnet, and it has some regularity. Oh, sonnet, obviously we know traditional love form. It has some regularity of a Shakespearean sonnet in the way that the stanzas are organised, because we've got quatrains, 3 quatrains, and then the final couplet. Interesting that sonnets are sometimes, but they're not always, split up like this one has been into the 3 quatrains and the couplet, perhaps suggesting some kind of fragmentary nature. That's always something that you could think about. So we've got some regularity here. Ideas introduced, developed, linked, summarised, but then we have got the metre being altered quite subtly in important places, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, about the gold, 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 about the single word now. There are moments when you read it yourself in iambic pentameter, there are moments when it does seem to follow iambic pentameter, there are moments when you're brought completely out of that rhythm, and so I think it perhaps contrasts maybe with the rhythm of the passing of time, because we think sort of the rhythm of a clock ticking. It's quite regular, well, very regular. It never changes. That contrasts with the poem, because although Carol Ann Duffy has the opportunity to use a regular rhythm, iambic pentameter, because that's how sonnets should be structured, she can't, she doesn't. And that's important, that decision that she's made. Rhyme scheme. Traditional sonnet sequence A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. That's the traditional Shakespearean sonnet rhyme scheme. However, there is some half rhyme. Now again, usually when half rhyme is used, it's intentional. So it's important to have a look perhaps at some of the half rhymes. We've got hair and here, so hair and here are half rhymes. Hour and ear. And I think half rhymes offer a sort of imbalance, just like that iambic pentameter that's been sort of skewed and played with. The half rhymes offer a kind of imbalance, almost as though the kind of rapture that the couple have over one another is kind of a shadow is being cast over it almost by the imbalance of these half rhymes. It could be argued as well that the fact that there is rhyme, it adds a kind of sensuality. Perhaps this idea of connection. If we think about the manhunt, the couplets there are important, or the couplet stanzas there are important because it adds the idea of a pairing and a connection, and perhaps that's what the rhyme here does as well. So it both adds an imbalance but also the idea of a connection.